Hello, welcome to the Science for Policy podcast. My name is Toby, and today I'm joined by Dr. Mikel Landabaso. Dr. Landabaso is the Director for Fair and Sustainable Economy in the European Commission's Joint Research Centre. He has an academic background in economics and a career that spanned regional development, innovation, science and research. So, Mikel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Toby, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, very happy that you're here. I have to say, the Joint Research Centre never ceases to amaze me. Every time I talk to someone who works there, they seem to work in a whole different area I never knew existed. It's a very diverse portfolio you've got there.
Indeed, yes. But let's say that our directorate is the think tank, the economic think tank of the European Commission. So we deal specifically on socioeconomic and territorial analysis and impact in particular. We are approximately 270 economists mainly, but also some engineers. And what we do is in 3 different sites, we advise, we produce evidence, data, reasons, arguments, and good science for our political masters in Brussels.
Very good. I see. So it's producing, it's primary research. It's not just evidence for policy, it's primary research also.
Exactly. Both. We have our own models, our own data, our own, let's say, experimentation, and on that basis, we produce the evidence.
Okay. And what's your role there? Because I know you have a background in regional development. What do you do with the JRC?
Well, I wonder myself, but don't tell anybody. I think there are 3 roles. One is as a director to establish the research direction, where to make the effort in terms of research that is more effective for policy making. So I'm supposed to be reading what are the political priorities of the European Commission and trying to convey to my colleagues which is the most fertile ground, the most promising research avenues that they could undertake in order to influence European Commission's policies, meaning legislation and investments. So that is one. The second one is really a manager. You have a lot of talent around. We are surrounded by excellent colleagues. And I've always said that we are going to aim at becoming the first research center without academic ego and have fun.
Yeah.
in the process. And the third one is probably what I'm trying to do here, which is representation. You need to represent what you stand for.
Okay, so let's zoom in a bit on your personal experience. Bearing in mind we have an audience mainly people working at the science policy interface, or at least interested in it. Could you briefly introduce your work in that area, promoting science and innovation as policy tools?
Well, I started in 1986 as head of research of the Regional Development Agency, the innovation agency of the Basque Country, right in the middle of the biggest industrial crisis that our region went through. And that was the beginning. And then in 1990, I joined Director General for Regional Policy in the European Commission. And over the years, I've been developing and concentrating really on how to design and implement regional innovation strategies. Research and innovation strategies that have this place-based perspective, this territorial perspective, with an emphasis on institutions, on demand pull, rather than just research and technology push. And that has taken me only 7 years. And we continue learning and developing on the need of a regional innovation strategy to promote economic development precisely in those areas that need it most.
Yeah, so it's about using science and technology as a policy lever to promote regeneration. Yeah, but I have to ask, why the European Commission, or rather, why is any international level actor getting its hands dirty in regional development at a subnational level?
Because I think the importance of what we call subsidiarity, which is an alignment of from the bottom to the top, the other way around, from the local and regional and national and international, the type of policies, investments, and legislation that these different institutional levels develop has to be aligned. This is probably one reason. The second one is that we have the responsibility as European Commission for a balanced distribution of opportunity throughout the geography of the Union. And regional policies there precisely to do so and try to do so. And despite of all the shortcomings and the current debates about that, I think it has changed radically many of the regions, not all of them, and is far from perfect in the European Union. So leaving no one behind, exploiting latent potential are reasons for this policy to exist. And that was at the heart of our work, really.
Yeah, okay. So you're working directly with local and regional decision makers, and I guess often on quite sensitive topics. I mean, we're talking about regions that are struggling and undergoing social change, and
yeah,
I imagine things are quite controversial. And your role is to try and promote regeneration and to be an advocate for science and technology and innovation as a way to do that. So I just want to ask, quite broadly, really, what's it like being in that position, doing that job?
Well, my experience of it is that it is a very interesting learning exercise, and hopefully you're giving something back to those that you are working with. I've been probably in over 100 regions in over 20 countries over the last 30 plus years. And you understand the value, and probably, Toby, this responds also to your previous question, the value of being an honest broker, someone that comes from the outside. And it helps that you're coming with probably money, or that's what people think. And you don't have any particular agenda. You go into sometimes very parochial discussion and understanding of the world. And your role is not only open roads, but open minds and say, listen, I don't have any vested interest here. I'm here to help. I don't even speak your language properly. I don't understand the context as well as you do. But I bring with me probably an honest agenda, some funds, and experiences from outside that might prevent you from reinventing the wheel. So if I can help, if I can mediate, if I can get you together with others that face the same challenges, and I can help you out with whatever we have learned along the process, then let's work together. So in short, it is a very enriching experience. You see the wide diversity that exists in Europe. For me, diversity is also a source of innovation. It's something to preserve. And also you see the huge opportunities that exist. Because, Toby, one basic thing is that, unfortunately, unlike with coal or steel or raw materials, the real raw material of economic development, which is talent and intelligence, has been evenly distributed across the territory. The difference is in some places this talent is valorized because, well, there is a concentration of centers that valorize talent in the form of maybe university education and research centers of excellence, but the talent is there everywhere. So there is some sense in trying to valorize all this talent wherever they exist, and when, for good reasons, critical masses, agglomerations, economies of scale, whatever you want to call it, excellence requirements, they concentrate somewhere. There's some sense in trying to transfer, for example, the results of research, irrigate the territory through technology transfer so that everybody can have an opportunity. Look at the politics of it, for example. I mean, if you look at the maps of voting, you can see a certain correlation with what some people call development traps, and regions that feel that there is no more an opportunity for them, that they are left behind. We, as the European Commission, as an independent honest broker coming from the outside, with no vested agenda, can provide a lot of knowledge, input, help beyond money.
All right, then let's talk more about the role of research in development policy and in development itself, because you've written that regional development correlates closely with research and innovation. Why is that?
If we go back to basics, the whole thing about economic development, to put it simply, is about productivity. And productivity is at the heart of growth. And innovation is key for productivity. I was reading just recently, this report by I think it's IMF, recognizing the critical role of the solo residual, the total factor productivity in development processes of countries, of regions, everywhere. So if this is so, there are two questions. How on earth are we going to avoid, let's say, the territorial differences that we see in some instances widening without first addressing the gap in terms of innovation and research? Because there is a correlation. Secondly, we need to understand what are the sources of innovation in the economy. Is innovation just a linear process in which a blonde surfer in a garage in the States has a happy idea and it goes all the way to the market if the right conditions are there? Or it is a bit more complex than that? Is it a systemic process in which the interdependencies of the different stakeholders in a given territory are critically important for innovation to emerge? Well, I subscribe to the second type of thinking. And this is why I think that what we call innovative milieus, it was regions with innovation ecosystems that are effective. That means that companies can compete and collaborate with other companies, for example, in clusters. They have a healthy, direct relationship with knowledge centers, be it universities or technology transfer. There is a banking sector that understands that innovation is something difficult, takes long, based on intangibles, and has high risk. A public sector which is receptive, which is open to lead and listen, not just to tell or dictate. There is something someone said, I think it was from the Silicon Valley friend in one of these conferences, saying innovation cannot be dictated, but it can be cultivated. And that's precisely our role. No? Our role is to promote this cultivation of innovation. And you asked me for examples. It's very difficult because there is no perfect example. No? Let me tell you what it should not be, and then maybe two examples of people that have followed our methodologies over the years, and we are both giving and learning from them. The one thing it should not be is to try to replicate the Silicon Valley everywhere, or to think that innovation is simply a linear model and all you have to do is to fund the most clever people in the universities we all know, in the internationally connected hubs that will help us compete with the Chinese and the Americans. That we need. And of course, we need excellence, not second-rate research ever. But innovation is something that if you want to cultivate, has to start from understanding how companies, small and medium-sized companies in traditional sectors, can and do innovate. Let me give you some examples. The people in Navarra, not to speak about my own region, you would ask, and they will tell you that different governments from different political sides have had the understanding and the deep pockets to continue and build upon the regional innovation strategy that they started quite some time ago. Instead of having this non-invented here syndrome, you have a continuation of efforts. You understand that innovation takes time. and that it is a collective endeavor and it has a systemic character, and that you need to fertilize the ground, plant the seeds, and water it. Yes, with public money, but always as a catalyst for private investment. Let me give you another example that's close to my heart because it was one of the pioneers. For example, in Limburg, I don't know if you heard about innovation vouchers, for SMEs. And it was an initiative that was created there. I also have very good memories about the work that the colleagues in Ireland and Wales did. Pity that our British colleagues decided to leave because some of the most interesting projects we had at the time were in the UK. Lord Sainsbury, for example, had the vision when we were with him to come to a conference, and instead of doing what many politicians do, which is coming, giving a speech and leaving after saying how interesting it was, he said, no, I'm not going to give a speech. I've come here to listen. And after he listened what many people had to say, including ourselves. They say, I want to found a national network of these peers that we learn from each other. And I could go on for quite some time. And there are many that I am not paying tribute to, but they deserve to be mentioned too.
So how do we do that? So tell me a bit about how that works. So suppose you've got a particular region where you have the fertilized ground you were describing, and you've grown up some institutions, some companies, some businesses that are innovating, that are producing new ideas, that are kind of being this centripetal force you talk about. How do you then get that into policy in a way that improves the lives of the communities in which those things are based? What needs to be done?
Well, the short response to that is a regional innovation strategy. So, how do you do this? Well, first, you develop a methodology that starts from the demand, meaning, one of the DNAs of these smart specialization strategies, something that we called differently before, was the demand pool, the entrepreneurial discovery process. So in this fertile ground, in this system of interactions, in this ecosystem of innovation, you try to address and formalize and structure the needs and the opportunities. Needs and opportunities, needs from companies in the markets. We have, for example, we are developing with colleagues complexity theory. So if you are specialized as a company in a region, together with other companies in this particular market, this level of technology, with this level of your human capital, what are the market niches of higher value added you can move into? How can the public sector help you as a partner, as an honest broker, as a catalyst, move in that direction? Because it is in the minds and the experience of businessmen that these opportunities exist and they can be made visible, expressed. And it is the public sector that should be in a listening mood, trying to help them out, realizing them. What do you need to realize this vision, which is moving into higher value added markets, producing better jobs for the people in the region? How do you modernize? How do you diversify the economy? As a collective effort, by sectors, by clusters, with certain companies, sometimes big companies that can generate suppliers that could elevate. And what is the role of the public sector? All that is explained in these methodologies that we are co-creating with the regions.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask you before we finish our conversation, if I may. How welcome is this stuff? I mean, you work in regions where there are often severe societal challenges, where there's political pressure to solve these problems and, to improve local people's situation, but I guess quite a lot of political controversy and division as well. And then you come in with these ideas about science and innovation being a key part of it. Do policymakers at regional level recognise that this is what they need?
Toby, there are two kinds of reactions. On the business side, well, three mainly, the universities and technology centers and the politicians. On the politicians, that is the national and regional governments, the reaction is normally a protective one, a defensive one, because they feel threatened by a transparent and inclusive bottom-up process that we are preaching. We are telling them, yeah, you might be in command, you might be the political masters, but first and foremost, you need to understand and listen, not to tell, because they feel threatened for good reason. Because a serious, solid analysis usually shows that their research infrastructures and possibly their policies or the list of categories of training in their vocational training do not fit the demand or are lacking in many ways. Third thing, they feel threatened because some of the ideas cut across traditional power boundaries between ministries. And you need to have a whole of government approach. Toby, tell me why in a region there is this abundance, this metastasis of policies. Why there is an economic development policy, an industrial policy, an innovation policy, a vocational training policy, and very often they have not talked to each other. So when you come with this notion of a methodology to be a strategy, starting by listening, cooperation, and understanding of the systemic process of innovation, not simply, oh, I have a budget, I'll play it safe. I have these three very clever professors in my university, I'll give them the money. Everybody more or less agreed. Or I will go to the usual suspects, the companies that, have been traditionally working with me or have the biggest voice or lobbying power. What happens with the startups? Startups are probably in 3, 5, 10 years' time, the companies that will provide 1/3 of the new jobs, decent jobs for the young people. But they don't have any lobbying power because by their own definition, they are startups. They are just beginning. They are small. They are lost. They are fragile. So who is going to speak up for them, for example? And then the non-invented here syndrome by this or that minister is they are all reasons that militate against what we are proposing, really. So the reaction normally is some of these strategies are parochial or inward looking. You were talking about the international dimension, it's critically important. They are driven by external consultants. You play it safe. You are in government and then you say, well, I'll pay these consultants because it's much, they get a nice report. It's very expensive. And I say, yeah, I validate it or not, but I have it under my control. They usually focus excessively on the supply side, on the research infrastructures, on the equipment. And if it is more expensive, even better because it consumes money very quickly. And big companies, that's the politicians or that's the regional governments. Bottom line, you want clever, risk, non-adverse, open-minded, opening minds, not opening roads, working as a catalyst for change and not in the driving seat, probably, letting others in the driving seat. For these strategies to succeed, in my experience, you need an ad hoc institutional setup that incorporates all the relevant stakeholders. The university, the reaction is, what's in there for me? Because my incentive is to get money for research, publish, but very few have this third objective, this civic engagement. So you need a system of incentives in the university and a governance system that is prone to understand this systemic nature of innovation and collaborate with the communities in which they are settled. And this does nothing to do with not being excellence research. They need to be internationally connected. And then the companies. And in the companies, I remember meeting with a number of these businessmen, say, listen, what we need is that you go from loving and selfish into enlightened self-interest. Enlightened self-interest means that maybe your company in the short term will not get the money that you will want. But in the medium term, maybe it will be win-win, it will be better for all, and you will be a beneficiary. So enlightened self-interest, understanding that you're part of that community, that you're interested in the community to thrive, because sooner or later, and probably sooner, it will also benefit you and your company and your turnover and everything else. So I think you need to cook with this, well, actually, this triple helix.
Last question. Are we making progress? I mean, are we better at fostering research and innovation for development than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago?
Yes. Yes, Toby. When we started, the word innovation hardly existed, and it was nowhere to be found in the speeches of the politicians. I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s. Then I started to see signs at airports of big multinational companies talking about innovation. By the late 90s, no self-respected politicians would produce a speech without the word innovation 20 times. And at least there is this conscience that innovation is critically important in Europe in particular, to move forward, to offer the opportunities to the regions and the young people and the companies that can go bigger, scale up. And we need that. We need that in the context we are today internationally. And we need that because people cannot feel that they are left behind. That, I saw a McKinsey report 3-4 years ago where they said black and white, 50% of the new jobs will be created in just 48 big cities in Europe. Well, I think there is a case for exploiting latent potential much wider than just these 48 cities through innovation.
Well, this has been a really interesting conversation, very eye-opening for me in an area I know almost nothing about. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your experience and your expertise with me and with our audience. Dr. Mikel Landabaso, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. And thank you for having, this unique Science for Policy. I was surprised when I saw it, and it's so necessary. So congratulations.
The Science for Policy podcast is created by the Scientific Advice Mechanism to the European Commission. It's produced and presented by Toby Wardman, with additional editing by Nina Skorczak. The Scientific Advice Mechanism provides evidence-based expertise and policy recommendations to inform policymaking in the European Commission. This podcast is funded by the EU via the SAPEA Consortium. Our theme music is composed by Carlo Alfredo Piatti and performed by Elisaveta Shushenko.